when you hear about tensions rising between two countries, and, well, both of them have nuclear weapons, it's hard not to feel a bit worried.
Definitely.
And that's exactly the situation playing out right now between India and Pakistan. After just a truly awful terrorist attack in Kashmir, we've now seen some pretty swift military actions. And, well, we're hearing very different stories about what actually happened.
Yeah, what's really striking about this particular spike, I think, is just how fast things seem to have escalated. From a terrible event to quite significant military responses. We're not just talking about strong words here. There have been real military movements and, well, by all accounts, casualties on both sides of the border. So this deep dive, we're going to take a really close look at this serious and, frankly, rapidly changing situation.
Absolutely. And we've got this detailed report here. It lays out the timeline of these recent events, but crucially, it also digs into the long history that, well, fuels this whole conflict, which, as we know, is just essential for understanding what's going on now. Plus, it gives us that vital overview of the military capabilities of both nations. So our goal here, our mission for this deep dive, is to really try and break down this complex situation, get to the core issues, and, understand the potential dangers this escalation could actually lead to. So let's start right at the beginning. What was the spark? What ignited this current round of intense activity?
Well, the report we're looking at, it highlights a very recent and, as you said, tragic terrorist attack in Kashmir. 26 people lost their lives.
Awful.
A group calling itself the Resistance Front, or TRF, they claimed responsibility. Now, India's position, their contention, is that this TRF isn't really independent. They believe it's actually a proxy group for Lashkar-e-Taiba.
Which is a known group with ties to Pakistan.
A well-known group, yes, with established connections, according to many sources. India alleges indirect Pakistani support for TRF.
And Pakistan's reaction, as you'd expect, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Pakistan has strongly denied any link to the attack or any support for the TRF. But India's response, it went beyond just words, didn't it?
It did. The report details this military operation they launched, codenamed Operation Sindoor.
Okay, so let's try and unpack that. What did India actually do militarily, according to the report?
Okay, so according to the Indian government, specifically their Ministry of Defense, Operation Sindoor involved a series of targeted strikes. They were aimed at what India described as terrorist infrastructure.
Okay.
And these targets, they claimed, were located both inside Pakistani territory itself and also in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, the part of Kashmir currently under Pakistani control.
Right.
India said the whole point was to dismantle these places where they believe attacks against India are planned and launched from.
And what was the immediate fallout from these strikes? I mean, on the ground, the report mentions some, pretty significant differences in the casualty numbers being reported. Can you walk us through that? Because it sounds confusing. It is, and that's a really critical point. It highlights just how hard it is to get a clear picture in these situations. So India claimed their strikes killed at least 31 people, and they insisted all of them were terrorists.
Okay, 31 terrorists according to India.
All right. But Pakistan, they strongly dispute this. They said the casualties from what they called Indian missile attacks included civilians. Their figures were at least 8 killed and 35 injured in areas inside Pakistan's Punjab province and also in Pakistan-administered Kashmir.
So a completely different story. Civilians involved, according to Pakistan.
Yes. And adding to this grim picture, the report also notes that India reported 10 deaths on their side of Kashmir, which they attributed to shelling from Pakistan during the same time frame.
10 fatalities on the Indian side from shelling. Wow.
So yeah, you've got these starkly different versions of events about who was hit and, the human cost.
It really does paint a confusing and, well, frankly, quite frightening picture of what's happening. The report also gives a specific list, doesn't it? The locations India claims they hit, 9 of them.
Yes, that's right. India identified 9 specific places as targets for Operation Sindoor. 4 were inside Pakistan proper: Bahawalpur, Muridke, and Sialkot.
Okay.
And the other 5 were in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Places like Markaz Subhanallah, Sarjal, Markaz Abbas, Sidna Bilal Camp, Markaz Taiba, Markaz Al-Hadith, Shwawi Nala Camp, Markaz Rahil Shahid, and Memuna Joya. quite a list.
And these weren't just random spots on a map, were they? The report suggests India specifically linked these places to certain banned groups.
That's correct. Indian officials stated publicly that these locations were headquarters or perhaps training centers for several key militant organizations, groups that are officially designated as terrorist groups and have a history in the region.
Like who?
Like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, the group we mentioned earlier, and Hizbul Mujahideen. So India's claim is that by hitting these specific sites, they were directly targeting the operational capability of these groups.
Okay. Beyond the immediate, tragic loss of life in the military action, the report also touches on how this affected ordinary people. It sounds like there were major disruptions.
Oh, absolutely. The sharp rise in tension led to widespread flight cancellations in and out of Jammu and Kashmir, but also affecting other airports in northern India, too.
Right.
Major airlines, Air India, Air India Express, SpiceJet, they all put out advisories, had to stop services because of the security restrictions. It really shows you how serious things got and the immediate knock-on effect on civilian life.
Yeah, definitely. And what was the official word from Pakistan's leadership? The report mentions Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif responding.
Yes, Prime Minister Sharif strongly condemned India's actions. He called them a cowardly attack. He asserted Pakistan's right to respond firmly to what he termed an unprovoked Indian attack, and he indicated that a resolute response from Pakistan was already underway.
Resolute response underway. That kind of language from the top is obviously worrying. It suggests, potential for more escalation, this cycle continuing.
Exactly. It's a major cause for concern.
It certainly is. This immediate back and forth is deeply concerning. But to really get a handle on how this could escalate further, we need to sort of zoom out, look at the bigger picture, specifically the military power on both sides. The report gives us a useful comparison here.
That's right. The analysis mentioned from Military Watch magazine, it ranks India among the top 5 military powers globally. So significant overall strength.
Top 5. Okay.
Pakistan, while still having a very formidable military, is ranked 9th. Generally, India has a larger force and more modern equipment across the board. Pakistan's military, though smaller, is often described as being, very agile. It's historically focused more on defensive strategies and developing capabilities for, let's say, covert activities.
Then, of course, when we talk military balance between India and Pakistan, the elephant in the room is nuclear weapons. You just can't ignore it.
Absolutely not.
The report points out their arsenals are actually pretty similar in size.
They are surprisingly close, yes. Current estimates suggest India has around 180 nuclear warheads. Pakistan is believed to have approximately 170.
Wow.
Just those numbers alone, they really underscore the catastrophic potential of any large-scale conflict between them. Even a limited exchange could have consequences that are just unthinkable.
And the report also gets into their official nuclear policies, their doctrines, and it seems there's some really key differences there, aren't there? How they view using these weapons.
Yes, very important differences. India has declared a no first use policy. So officially, according to their stated doctrine, India would only use nuclear weapons after being hit by a nuclear attack first on its territory or forces.
Okay, retaliation only.
In theory, yes. However, the report does note there have been some signs, especially since maybe 2019, that India might be reconsidering this policy. It's being debated.
Interesting. And Pakistan?
Pakistan, on the other hand, has never adopted a no first use policy. Their strategic thinking is that nuclear weapons are a vital deterrent against India's much larger conventional military forces.
Right, the conventional imbalance.
Exactly. They argue that the possibility of using tactical nuclear weapons, smaller battlefield nukes, is necessary to counter a potentially overwhelming conventional attack from India.
So Pakistan basically sees its nuclear capability, especially those tactical weapons, as a way to sort of level the playing field against India's conventional strength.
That's the essence of their strategic rationale, yes. But as the report really emphasizes chillingly, the danger is that any nuclear exchange, limited, tactical, strategic, whatever, it could have utterly devastating consequences, potentially millions dead, widespread, long-term environmental damage. The report cites estimates, worst case scenario, maybe up to 20 million fatalities.
20 million. That's staggering, deeply sobering.
It really is. It highlights the immense responsibility that comes with these weapons.
Absolutely terrifying to even think about.
Oh.
Okay, shifting focus a bit now, beyond the immediate triggers and the current military situation. It's impossible, really, to grasp the depth of this crisis without understanding the history. the long, incredibly complex history of the Kashmir dispute. The report gives a pretty helpful overview of that context.
Yes, and it's crucial. The roots of the Kashmir problem, they go all the way back to 1947, the partition of British India, creation of independent India and Pakistan.
Right.
At that time, you had the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, majority Muslim population, but ruled by a Hindu Maharaja Hari Singh. He was initially given the choice, join India, join Pakistan, or try to remain independent.
And he initially leaned towards independence.
Yes, initially Maharaja Hari Singh wanted Kashmir to be independent.
But that didn't last, did it? What were the key events that turned Kashmir into this major point of conflict?
Well, the critical moment came in October 1947. Tribal militias, allegedly with support from Pakistan, invaded Kashmir. Facing this invasion, Maharaja Hari Singh appealed to India for military help. India agreed, but on the condition that the Maharaja formally accede, join India.
And he did.
He did. He signed the Instrument of Accession. Pakistan immediately contested this, of course, and that directly sparked the First India-Pakistan War in 1947-48. Eventually, a UN-brokered ceasefire in 1949 led to the division of Kashmir along a line initially called the Line of Surveillance, later renamed the Line of Control.
The Law Sea.
The Law Sea, exactly. So right from the start, the region was effectively split, and the legitimacy of that accession, the division itself, these remain the core unresolved issues today.
And it's not just about lines on a map, is it? The report really stresses the strategic, economic, and also the cultural significance Kashmir holds for both countries.
That's such a crucial point to grasp. Kashmir isn't just land, it's resource-rich minerals like borax, sapphire, graphite, marble, gypsum, even possibly significant lithium deposits.
Lithium, wow. That's huge now.
Exactly. So there's considerable strategic economic value, but beyond that, Kashmir has this deep cultural and historical resonance for both Pakistan and India. It's tied up in their national identities, their historical stories. It adds layers of emotion, national pride to the dispute that go way beyond just territory.
And this isn't the first time they've actually gone to war over Kashmir either. The report reminds us of several previous conflicts.
Oh, indeed. After that first war in 47-48, there were two other major wars primarily over Kashmir, 1965 and then the Kargil War in 1999. And besides those major wars, there have been countless other periods of high-tension military skirmishes, including more recently, like the 2016 surgical strikes India carried out after the Uri attack.
Right, I remember that.
And then the 2019 Pulwama bombing, which killed many Indian paramilitary personnel, followed by India's Balakot airstrikes deep inside Pakistan.
Those Balakot strikes in 2019, they were particularly significant, weren't they? The report highlights that it was the first time since the 1971 war that India had hit targets inside what's internationally seen as Pakistan proper. Why was that such a big deal?
The Balakot operation really crossed a threshold, one that had sort of held for decades. After the Pulwama attack, claimed by a Pakistan-based group, India deciding to strike a target well inside Pakistan was seen as a major shift, a signal of more assertive action.
Right.
And that, in turn, led to Pakistan launching retaliatory air raids. And that brief but very intense dogfight between their air forces, it brought them dangerously close to a much wider conflict and raised serious worries about further escalation.
So given this long, often violent history and this very recent sharp escalation with Operation Sindoor, what does the report suggest might happen next? What are the potential implications?
Well, the report raises several important points about where this could go. Domestically, in India, Operation Sindoor seems to have generated pretty widespread support right across the political divide. This kind of, nationalistic feeling could potentially boost Prime Minister Modi's popularity, especially maybe after some recent setbacks his party faced in regional elections.
That's a really interesting point, how domestic politics can feed into these decisions about military action and conflict. The report also touches on some broader concerns, doesn't it, about the direction of India's political system itself.
It does, yes. It highlights a growing concern among some observers about what they see as maybe increasing autocratic tendencies in India. The argument basically is that in regimes where power is more centralized, less tolerant of dissent, there might be a greater temptation to take bigger risks internationally, as a way to shore up domestic support, project strength.
Okay. And flipping to Pakistan, how might they be viewing this? What sort of internal pressures might their leadership face now in terms of a response?
The report suggests Pakistan's military, which, as we know, holds a very influential position in the country, is likely feeling strong pressure to show a credible response to India's actions. The military often uses the perceived threat from India to justify its large budget share, so a perceived failure to respond effectively could hurt their standing domestically. Plus, the fact that India's strikes apparently hit areas in Punjab province considered Pakistan's heartland that's significant, it likely increases the pressure on them to deliver a strong, visible response.
It sounds like a situation where both sides might feel almost pushed towards further escalation, at least in the short term, driven by domestic politics, strategic thinking. The report also points out something really worrying: a lack of communication channels.
That's a profoundly concerning aspect right now. The report really emphasizes the absence of any sort of meaningful direct security talks or established ways for them to manage crises bilaterally.
So no hotline, essentially, or not an effective one.
Or at least not effective, well-used mechanisms. And in moments of high tension like this, that lack of reliable channels for communication, for de-escalation, it dramatically increases the risk of mistakes, misunderstandings, things spiraling out of control unintentionally.
And it seems like the U.S., which sometimes played a role in calming things down, might not be as involved or effective now.
Yes, the report notes that too. A perceived decline in the U.S.'s ability, or perhaps willingness, to act as a consistent crisis manager in South Asia, maybe due to shifting U.S. priorities or perceived unpredictability from Washington.
Right.
This reduced role for outside mediation just makes de-escalation even harder. Fewer ways for third parties to help bridge the gap, you know?
So we're left with this really complex, dangerous mix: deep history, a recent violent trigger, significant military power on both sides, including nukes, strong domestic pressures, and then this worrying lack of communication or reliable outside help. And the core issue, the seemingly impossible knot to untie, as the report concludes, remains these fundamentally opposed views on Kashmir itself.
Precisely. Both India and Pakistan have just been resolute, unwavering in refusing to give up any territory they currently control in Kashmir. This basic, seemingly irreconcilable disagreement, when you add in all the other factors, the recent violence, the military postures, domestic politics, the communication breakdown, it makes de-escalation look very, very difficult indeed.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together after our deep dive. We've looked at the immediate events, the terrible attack, India's Operation Sindoor hitting targets they claim were terrorist bases in Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This led to casualties, conflicting stories, and a major spike in tension. We've also touched on the military balance, the terrifying nuclear reality, and the long, tangled history of the Kashmir dispute that underpins everything.
Right.
And finally, we considered the worrying potential for this to get worse, given the politics in both countries and the lack of good ways to de-escalate or reliable outside help.
And it's just absolutely vital to keep in mind the incredibly high stakes here. We are talking about two nuclear-armed neighbors locked in this state of heightened tension. Any misstep, any unintended escalation could have truly devastating consequences for the region, and honestly, potentially far beyond their borders.
It certainly leaves you with a lot to mull over. You know, considering those deep historical roots we talked about and the current political climates in both India and Pakistan, what are the most likely scenarios now? I mean, for de-escalation, or maybe, unfortunately, for further, potentially more dangerous escalation. And in this really fragile situation, what role, if any, could international players still realistically play? It really makes you think beyond the headlines, doesn't it? Grapple with the complex and, frankly, incredibly dangerous realities unfolding there.